Hello, and welcome to the Front Seat Life podcast. I am your host, Jessica Butts, where I am here to help you be unapologetically who you are in your life, love, and business by understanding and embracing your innate personality type. Most of you know I am all about not doing stuff that you suck at, absolutely leaning into your front seat, and that is what we're going to be talking about in this podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I am the CEO and creator of Front Seat Life. I am a Meyers-Briggs expert. I'm a life and business coach for intuitive women, author, keynote speaker, obviously podcaster, and former couples therapist and psychotherapist. I'm an ENFJ, truth teller, F-bomb dropper, lover of all things Maui, and fiercely dedicated to helping you be unapologetically who you are. I am so excited to take you on this new series called Front Seat 16, and that means we are going to do a deep dive into all 16 Meyers-Briggs types, as well as the front seat methodology behind every single one of the types. So it'll be a 16-week series. I have guests every single week coming on, talking to you about some of their front seatness, some of their backseat BS, that is what they're terrible at, and everything in between. Okay, buckle up. Let's do this. Welcome back, everybody. It is Jessica Butts, your host, and today we're talking about the ESTJ. So in just a little bit, I am going to have one of my favorite people ever on the podcast. Her name is Karen Rosenzweig. She is a total go-getter, an incredibly awesome human being. But before we get started, in all of these episodes of all of the 16 types, I want to go over 5 main things, really, which is more the front seat life methodology, my intellectual property, before we jump into our guests. So those 5 things are who an ESTJ is overall, their front seat, their back seat, their archetype, my made-up intellectual property, and then a really great career for each type. So let's start with an ESTJ overall. Meyers-Briggs calls them the guardian. I would probably lovingly possibly call them the controllers or in control. ESTJs are extroverted, sensing, thinking, and judging, which means they're, again, extroverted, kind of out in the world. They are very logical, detail-oriented. They make decisions with their head, and then they're very organized, structured, on time. So if you pair all of that together, ESTJs are pretty controlling type. They like things a certain way. They don't have a lot of emotional regulation. They're not super into emotions. They are very into logic and order and data and structure and let's do things a certain way. They can absolutely come off as very controlling and bossy, and they are real kind of go-getters, get-her-doners. So you will learn more about that from Karen in just a little minute. And then she's married to an INFP, which is literally her exact opposite. So I think you're going to enjoy hearing a lot about their love for each other, but also some of the things that they struggle with. So that's number 1. Now let's talk about the front seat of the ESTJ. So their driver, the very, very best part of them is an extroverted thinker. And this is right straight from my book, Don't Do Stuff You Suck At, page 122, 123. They are very happy with things in order. They like to organize people and things to achieve a purpose. They use logic and reasoning with others, not feelings. They direct action and make impersonal decisions. They collect information in a very orderly way, and they solve problems in a systematic manner. They're co-pilot, which is equally important. It just isn't as seen because it's an introverted part of them. So what the world sees of an ESTJ is this extroverted thinker, bossy, controlling, putting things in place. But the other half of their front seat is an introverted sensor. And this is the person that has like an internal library of detailed information, facts, feelings, sensation, information. I call them like the file cabinet people. Like they can remember, back in 1992, Sarah looked at me in this way and I have, deducted all kinds of decisions about that person based on like the way that she looked at me or her arms were folded a certain way. They are very good at taking in information in a very logical way. Again, they have an internal storehouse of data and details. They enjoy rituals and traditions like holidays and birthdays, things for them. They like things a certain way and it kind of goes year after year. They're also very into day-to-day routine. It makes them happy, which is part of the reason that I love talking about this in this way is that these are things that I think you miss sometimes when you're only learning about your own type. So intuitive types ends the majority of my listeners as we actually don't really like we hate day-to-day routine. Like, let's be honest about it. We hate it. I've actually even called it the death of us before because we just can't handle it. We need variety. We need things to be different almost on a weekly basis. And again, S's are really great with day-to-day routine and they are a stickler for details and data where again, intuitive types truly just couldn't care less. So that is their front seat. These two parts of them, the extroverted thinker out in the world, bossy, controlling people, and the introverted sensor in their minds are keeping track of all of the data and details. This is the very best part of them, both extroverted and introverted. And this is why people get the confusion of an ambivert because our front seat is both of these things and they are equally important. Okay, now let's talk about the back seat. All right, so here is the back seat of the ESTJ. The drunk uncle, which is just as a reminder, the things that they suck at and should not be doing is anything relying on their intuition. So forcing yourself to explore new ideas, people, possibilities, right? This is so funny because as a strong intuitive, like this is my entire jam. Like this is, if I think about my mom and I, this is where we don't quite gel because she is ESTJ/ESFJ. She's very close on those. And her thing is just very, like she doesn't understand my need to go do all of these crazy things and switching careers and writing new books and doing new things because again, she is not, as ESTJs are not forcing themselves to explore new ideas, people, and possibilities. Like that is their backseat. It's what they suck at. Forcing themselves to be imaginative, inventive, and innovative when again, that's 100% our front seat. They suck at trying to see the big picture. They suck at trying to energize people like rah, rah, cheerleaders. Kind of think of an ENFP energy where that is just 100% their jam. These people are like, fuck that shit. I don't want to do that. They suck at seeing possibilities, which may exist in the future because they are living in the now. They suck at playing what if games. Oh my God, it's like my favorite game in the world. What if we do this? And what if we did this? And what if? They suck at trying to think outside the box. And these people need people in their lives, hence my guest and her wife, that they really complement each other in this way because ESTJs will need somebody in their life to see the possibilities. So the other part of the backseat is when they are spending too much time doing stuff that they suck at and being forced to do that, they go into the backseat, which is the baby in the backseat. And this is highly stressed from doing things that they suck at or just overwhelmed or stressed out. This is introverted feeling. As a reminder, this comes out like a baby. So I'll just say they retreat from the world. They may not want to get out of bed. They may feel overwhelmed by their emotions. They may feel deeply hurt. And emotionally distraught or within behavior worries people in your life because ESTJs are normally up and bossy and telling people what to do and in control. And when a baby takes over that part of our personality that is stressed out, overwhelmed, pushed to the brink, this is the part that it becomes like a child, and it's can be very scary to other people. So that is the backseat of an ESTJ, and I'll come right back with the archetype. Okay, let's talk about archetypes. So the archetype, there are 4 archetypes. This is part of the Front Seat Life methodology. You won't hear this anywhere else because I made it up. Archetypes are, for the ESTJ, is the SJ. It is always the second and last letter. And so not surprisingly, this is the police. The archetype for an SJ is the police. And there are 4 types that have the police, and it is a very high percentage of population because there are more S's in the world, as that 75%, and there's a bit more J's, like 55%. So the police are just how it sounds. They are organized and in control and like to tell people what to do. And they have rules and regulations for themselves and for others. These are people that you can always rely on. They will always be on time. They are the ones, I mean, it's funny, I'm getting ready to go on vacation or a little sister and mom trip, and both of them are SJs. And the messages that are going back and forth between these two of like, this is what you need to bring, and this is the suggested route, and this is blah, 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 blah. And while I'm a J, I am definitely not into this. I'm like, great. Okay. I know how to pack. Like, I will bring shoes and flip-flops and a bathing suit. Like, check, got it. But it's just a completely different way of being. And so the police is, again, kind of policing other people in that way because they like to be in control and they like somewhat to control other people. Okay, so their arch nemesis, ironically, with Karen and Katie, which are my guests for today, Karen's wife, Katie, is her arch nemesis, which is an NP. So NPs are squirrels, and they are fly by the seat of their pants. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. Always late, kind of scrambling. Oh my God, I forgot my flip-flops. Oh, I forgot all of this, right? And it's just a very nonchalant type. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I'm going to go with the flow. And these two really drive each other crazy, unless, which we're going to talk about in the episode in just a minute, is learn to love and appreciate this in other people. Okay, let's jump into the last one, which are careers. All right, so excellent careers for ESTJs are anytime they get to be a boss, anytime they get to be in control of their own schedule. Oftentimes, actually, being a manager can be a double-edged sword for this type because they don't like dealing with people's emotions. And oftentimes that is part of it. So they are normally better at being self-employed or self-motivated. So if they are like a real estate agent or a mortgage broker or something like that, where they don't necessarily have to be managing other people, but they're very intrinsically motivated normally. ESTJs are kind of the top of the top when it comes to motivation. They are not normally somebody who needs a lot of rah-rah. They don't need a lot of like people telling them what to do because they are, again, very normally, very intrinsically motivated. They also don't love group programs and things like that because they don't like all the rah-rah bullshit. If they're going to have a coach, the best kind of coach for them is an N, for them to see possibilities outside of what they may not be seeing. And if they are a woman in this case, and their clients are women or identify as women, that can also be a struggle because 75% of females are feelers. And so thinking women can come off very abrasive in a female dominated industry. So just a few things to be thinking about in their career focus. So that is enough of that. I hope that was helpful and interesting to you. And here is the fantastic episode with Karen Rosenzweig. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Front Seat Life podcast. I have Karen Rosenzweig here with me today. She is actually a very good friend of mine. We've been in the entrepreneurial world in the Seattle area for many, many years. So before I jump in and talk a little bit about the ESTJ and Karen as a guardian and talking about her cars, I would love for you, Karen, just to introduce yourself, say hi, tell us what you do in the world.
Sure. I have been an entrepreneur for the last 15 years. I had a couple of different businesses. Most recently, since 2009, I have run One Smart Cookie Marketing, which is a marketing, coaching, and consulting firm where I help small business owners and entrepreneurs learn how to market themselves so they have more time to do what they really love to do and get them organized in a strategy and set them on their way. So a little bit like training wheels. So I kind of ride along with them until they get it and then they're off. So it's very rewarding and fulfilling to see them kind of come into their own and handle their own marketing.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So right before we started this too, we were talking about the fact that Karen is an ESTJ, which is also my mom's type. And so every time I post something about my mom's type, Karen's like, whoop, whoop to your mom and like why we get along and why we don't get along. And then your wife, Katie, is the exact opposite type, an INFP. So we will absolutely jump into that in a second. But I actually want to start by just quickly talking about your front seat and your back seat. So as the guardian, and E, which is extroverted, S is sensing, which is very detail oriented and factual and takes in with the five senses, thinking, which is a very logical person. And making logical decisions. And then J, like me, which is like hyper organized, very controlling, likes things a certain way. So Karen's front seat is an extroverted thinker. So her very, very best self is when she is out in the world connecting with people, but in a very logical, kind of bossy way. So it was not surprising to me to hear you say that you love to bring clients in, kind of tell them what to do, have some training wheels, and then bye. Like scoot them off, get the frick out of here. And then your second best self in your front seat is introverted sensing. So when you are spending 80% of your time coaching, consulting, basically being an expert in your field, bossing people around. And in your head, it's a lot of facts and data and details. You are probably an unbelievably amazing coach for those of us like myself that are a little squirrely. Like we like bright, shiny objects and we're all over the place and let's go here and let's go there. Karen, I don't really want to do this. I want to go over here and do this. And instead you are focus, sister, focus. And I love that you're cracking up right now. For those of you watching the YouTube, you can see her. For those of you who are doing the podcast, Karen's laughing. And then your back seat is my front seat, and your wife's front seat. And I know we have a mutual dear friend, also their back seats, our front seat is your back seat, which is intuitive. So this is probably, again, why you're an amazing coach for these types of people, because intuitives are all about new ideas and thinking up new things and flitting from here to here and thinking outside the box and how can I do it different? And that's not great for you. Like, you know what you do, you stay in your lane. You're probably pretty systematized and structured in that way. And then your baby in the back seat, ironically and interestingly, is your wife's best thing, which is introverted feeling. So you get a little closed off and you want to hide from the world and you kind of act like a baby and you might get a little over emotional. Like if you're really pushed to the max, you kind of go inward and don't want to deal. Okay. So does that sound fairly accurate?
Yeah, that's me. You got it. Nailed it.
Okay, good. It's always not fun when you do this and then people are like, oh, that's totally not me. But that is what my interpretation again of the Meyers-Briggs is this front seat, back seat thing. So I now want you in your words for the listeners, because again, that is why I am doing this. Instead of me telling people about types, I want to bring in every single somebody that I love and admire to talk about themselves. So, Karen, how would you describe yourself?
So definitely dependable, loyal. You can count on me. Pretty predictable. very black and white. So I think that's been one of the major struggles in my life is I don't really get the gray area. And I always have an opinion. There's never a, well, let's see what happens. Or it's either yes or no, black or white, green or blue. So I think, people can always count on me for an opinion or an answer, or you're never going to get the, I don't know, or let me check or get back to you. It's, whether it's welcome or not, I always have an idea or an opinion or a suggestion. So I think that's kind of what is sort of me in a nutshell. And then the last thing, which is usually good, but sometimes bad, is competitive. I really don't like to lose. So, that can be a problem when you play games with people that are play, we have these arguments over the definition of a game. My understanding, I think we've even looked it up in a dictionary, is somebody wins and somebody loses. But there are a lot of people that a game is just, we enjoy our time together and the activity, and it's just fun to play. And that is, I have found to be a challenge in my world. Is I think I was just raised to be very competitive. And if you won, you were good. And if you lost, you were bad. And so I don't know if that's as much a part of the personality as just something you are getting ingrained as a child, but it certainly supports most of my personality traits.
Okay, this is fantastic. So I actually have a quick question, and we're already going to get derailed a little bit, is that my partner makes games, and one of the game cycles or game categories, I guess is a better word for it, is called collaborative games, which I have never heard of before. And he tells me that there are certain people that have a very hard time playing collaborative games. Are you one of those people?
Yeah, I don't even know what it is, but the word just makes me like, oh my God, no, no.
There's no winner and loser. You collaborate.
It just sounds like a big, like kumbaya discussion, whatever. Like a game is, just by inherently a game is a competition. So collaborative, that would be really hard for me to wrap my head around, I think.
I'm loving this already. One, because you're being so honest. So this is what's great, is that I think a lot of ESTJs feel this way, but they feel guilty about talking about being this bold about what you're talking about. It's like, I don't want no kumbaya bullshit. I want a winner, a loser, that I'm super black and white. Like, you know yourself, Karen. So tell me how this has possibly negatively affected times in your life, your relationships, just kind of broadly, how has this been a challenge for you?
Well, it's, so I always joke, I sort of I feel like I didn't get the sympathy, empathy genes, so I don't get the, like I see that something's happening and I probably should feel bad or ask more about it, but I don't even get like how to do that or understand. And so the feeling, the people that are in the feeling part, it's just really hard to understand because I just want to like find an answer, find a solution. Let's do something next. Like, let's sweep past this thing. And so it can be for people that want to like process things and talk about stuff, and or they just get overwhelmed and all of a sudden can't do something. I've been thinking this a lot in light of like the Olympics, right? Simone Biles having a lot of mental health concerns and maybe not wanting to compete. And I have really been having an inner struggle because the good part of me is like, oh, good, she's taking care of herself. That's what she should do. And I, totally is supportive of mental health issues. But then part of me is like, suck it up, girl. You're out the Olympics. Let's go. And so like, that's the part of my personality that is just, you got to power through and do this thing, which is totally not the PC answer to have right now.
Yeah.
So, but I see both sides. But so that's where it causes, like, I can almost like as a third person watch and observe and go, you should not say that and do that and think that, because that's not the thing to do. But like, it really is just so much of your personality. It's hard to become something different. So that kind of not understanding what another person's going through and maybe like what else could be going on. Like I just take it at face value and go, oh, well, you just did this. So it means that. So therefore this. And like, there's not a lot of alternative options. I just see something and make a decision about what's happening. And that is where I get in trouble because people, like if you'd asked me and found out my dog died yesterday, maybe you wouldn't have been so mean. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think that could have been so I miss a lot of the signs and signals that something else could be going on. And sometimes I power right through those. And that can be, especially in coaching, right? Because the reason a client isn't doing what they should or said they would or would be in their best interest, you find out, they just got a divorce or the dog died or somebody's got cancer and I feel horrible, but it never occurs to me there's something else going on. So I think probably the biggest problem is that I just see face value and go with it. And like, if you did this, it means that, and there isn't really an explanation. So what I get from my intuitive people is ask more questions and find out what's going on. And there's things like that you warm up to before you ask the questions or give direction, that maybe there's something affecting their world at large.
And how is that for you? So this is absolutely your backseat. Like this is you. I was just thinking while you were going through, I was like, she's the perfect person to bring on for being an ESTJ because you're being so honest and forthright about this. And I appreciate that so much because I know right now that there are people listening that are either like, oh my God, this is my mom, or this is my partner, or this is me. Because what we do as humans is we pathologize people. We have this weird thing where we assume everyone is like us. And so we're like, what is wrong with Karen? Why can she not understand this? And it's because there are completely different people in this world. Yeah. Yet we then go through this world of there's got to be something wrong with her, or she's a bitch, or she doesn't care, or she doesn't like me, or whatever. And my guess is, Karen, you have a lot of love for a lot of people. And so I'm really curious how this has been for you and how you cope with this in relationships, specifically possibly with Katie, because I think you're married to an INFP. Like this is her whole life. INFPs are kind and sensitive. Their number one trait is to be an introverted feeler and to have empathy and compassion. She watches the Olympics and cries, and she, this is how she feels. Everything's about feeling and curiosity and possibilities and what if. And you guys have been married a really long time. So tell us, I would love to use your relationship as a marker for this.
Yeah, I think it's a really good balance because imagine that I was married to somebody that was the same as me, like we would devour each other, right? I mean, it would be a disaster. And I joke that too, like if there was two of me, we would devour each other, but if there was two of Katie, nobody would ever get anything done and no one would get anywhere and nothing would ever get planned, right? So there's this yin and yang and trying to figure out who, like if there's 100% scale, like no way we're ever 50-50, but like sometimes you can just see like, oh, wow, you got to dial it back because she needs to do this thing over here and feel and say this and whatever. And you can't, be the primary right now. Or so there's a lot of that judging of something's going on and I really should shut up right now because I don't get it, but I just know that I shouldn't take the lead. So I think there is, it's an everyday reminder of, everybody isn't like me. And so I think that is, I don't know where we get that sort of understanding as a kid of people should be like you and do what you think and do what you say, but it's, it doesn't serve you well. And, I work on it a lot, trying to figure out how to be compassionate and understand other people. And just because I would call you back right away doesn't mean everyone else would call me right back, so there's a lot of that. So it's a lot of negotiation, I think, of, and it's hard because I'm like, I want my way all the time. I mean, I think that's an ESTJ, right? It's
totally.
And so it's really hard to like take a back seat and be like, okay, well, why don't you decide? Because if that happens, it's usually, well, I don't care. It's that, nobody will end up even eating dinner, right? It's like, well, you decide. Well, no, I think you should decide. Well, I don't know. What do you want to have? I don't, and I know everybody has these discussions quite often about things, but that's what happens is when I try to take a back seat, nothing will happen. So, because I think, for her personality type, they always sort of acquiesce to other people and want other people to be happy and keep the peace. And so when you're trying to give that to the other person, they won't take it. It's like a volleyball game, right? Of just like, can somebody make a decision? And then I always feel guilty when I make the decision when I was trying to give it away because I'm like, damn it, I got my way again. That wasn't supposed to happen this time. So I think it's really good though to have that just constantly in your face of somebody thinks differently, wants to do something differently, doesn't think the Olympics need to be on 24 hours a day, thinks going outside would be a better idea than, watching the Olympics or, like there's just always an alternative. I can almost count on if I want to do something, she doesn't. So it's just always a good reflector of, is there a better choice or a different choice or something that would be a mutual interest, instead of getting your way.
Yeah, this is great. So as a former couples therapist, right, I more often than not heard different types coming in and bitching about each other that, oh, Katie's not this and she doesn't do this and Karen's such a bossy bitch. And right, instead of what you two are doing, which is mature and loving and being in a marriage, is that you two sound like you appreciate the differences. So I'd like you to share, because this is so great for people to hear. What do you appreciate about your exact opposite type? What do you appreciate about Katie specifically as an INFP in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, missing the compassion or empathy gene, I never know the right thing to say when something's going wrong for somebody, or, oh my gosh, somebody just got cancer, or somebody's dad died, or somebody lost their job. I think my personality type is, well, let's fix it and do something. And like, we got to get through this, instead of like, she would see it more like, no, just be quiet and you sit with them, or you light a candle, or you do all these things. And I'm like, what, how is that helping? So yeah, so I think that's, really eye-opening and I know these things like intellectually and like, oh yeah, that would work. But it never is the thing. I think about it 2 days later, or that would have been helpful, or the thing to say, where she's just like, no, that's just what happens. It's the circle of life, right? They're going, let them go. Like they're going to pass peacefully and no, there's nothing to do. And I'm just like, oh my God, we got to do this and go here and say this and call them and be there. And it's like, no, we don't do anything. And so I think that's kind of what it's like being on that other side, is like, where did that even come from? Like, it wouldn't even occur to me, or if it would be way too late. And then beat yourself up because you didn't do the right thing. So I can always count on her to like think of the right thing to say or to do or not to do. Like, whoa, dial it back. If you do that, this is going to happen. And I'm like, ugh. So like, I think she saves me from like some very inappropriate things, just out of willingness to be helpful and do something right. Like I often would maybe say or do the wrong thing instead, where, I think somebody that is the more intuitive and the feeling can like stop and let there be, like, I hate silence. Like that just drives me crazy when there's not something happening. And when people don't talk, I think something's wrong. Like there's another just growing up trait. If there's silence, something bad's about to happen. Wow. And so, but for her, she can just sit and be so peaceful and like have all this. And I'm like, oh my God, I'd be chewing my arm off. Like I need something to do. And like, so COVID was a really, interesting experiment, right? To go through the COVID time, my personality it was horrific for me to like be shut down and not have things to do. And she was just like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And so it's like, that's really what's different, is you kind of, what you say, like appreciate, like slowing down and doing nothing and all. Like, I don't think I would ever choose to do that or see it or even consider that would be an option. But I observe it in her and go, wow, how is that even possible? But it always works out. And she can manifest things into her life like nobody's business, or, I'm the facts and the details. And I'm like, oh, you need $10,000 for that? Good luck. Go get another job. Right. And she'd just be like, yeah, well, I need $10,000. I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm pretty sure I'll have it by the end of the week. And every freaking time.
Wow.
Money comes from somewhere,
up that to $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, okay, well, this is cool. Can you like crank that up and let's get some more, like, and not that it's all about money but it's whatever it is. Like, somebody needs a job, or like, there's just like people that are intuitive and feel have the ability to open up to go, things are possible and they come from wherever. And I don't need to know how, where I'm just like, no, I need to know where and when and what time. So I'm ready. So that's a big difference, right? To watch somebody work in that space and be patient enough for something to happen that just doesn't happen in my world.
Yeah, so good. Have you two ever gone through a phase where you try or desire or want the other person to be like you? So, for example, does Katie ever get frustrated that, Karen, I want to teach you how to have some empathy, right? I think this is what a lot of couples do. It's like, well, I have this thing, so why don't you have it? And let me try to teach it to you. You two sound like you have figured it out, but I wonder if ever during the marriage, there's been a time of, why aren't, this is what I hear all the time. Why aren't you more like fill in the blank? Karen, why aren't you more empathetic? Katie, why aren't you more structured? So
I think I probably feel that way about her, but I don't think she feels that way about me. Like, I think she is unique enough to be like, that's your work and you get to go do it. And, I said, we have a common friend who's very good at this, and we both go and do our work with, another person. Because it's like, I can't do that work for you or show you how to do it. You have to go like figure it out. So I think, we both do that work independently. So I think that's a big help. But I don't think she ever, because I wonder sometimes, like, wow, why hasn't she said, get off your ass and do something? Or why haven't you, like, because I would have said that by now. And I'm like, I don't even think it occurs to her that I haven't done this. Or am not doing that. It's like, she's just like, live and let live, right? So whatever's going to happen. And I'm like hyper aware of every activity that goes on. So I think, yes, on my side, it's, whoa, why hasn't she done that yet? Or I would have done this. Or a lot of it comes up in a, like, I want to know something. I want to know right now. And so like, for me, I'm like, I'm picking up the phone and texting. Like, I need an answer now so I can like go to sleep and think about the 17 options. And in the morning, I'll know which one. And she's like, well, I don't know, if they don't, message back in 2 or 3 days, then maybe I'll do this. And then I'm like, oh, so I wish, yes, she would be more, the word I want to say was pushy. And then I'm like, well, that sounds really bad. I'm calling myself pushy. But yeah, I mean, I'm much more, I need it. I want to know, give me an answer. Let's decide. I can't wait till tomorrow. Like, I wish, yes, I could pull her into that sometimes. And then I go, oh, that might be really ugly. So, because if we were both like that, I think you would devour each other. So I think, yes, I would probably prefer sometimes she step up to my level, or like, can you want to try to win this game as much as me and not care? Like, if you're just having fun, like, can we win this? Like, but I don't think on her side, the only thing she ever has said is she wishes, it's the competitive thing is, could you just play the game and let the person, our friend with cancer, win and feel good about their life instead of you have to win? Like, I'm not saying that over, but that is the message is, maybe somebody else needs a win more than you need to win today. Could you just dial it back and like not, or, we've had people get up and just like stop playing in the middle of it. Cause like, okay, this is not fun and I'm sick of this, and you keep winning, or, you're like, we like, call people sandbaggers. Like, they're not playing up to their full level and trying not to play right. And so so it happens a lot in games. So I think they say like, you learn a lot from people if you play golf with them or play games, or it's where probably the worst part of, probably my, whatever my characteristics are, they seem to come out when we play games.
Okay. This is super interesting. Okay. I am so unbelievably excited. I feel like I need a drum roll, please. To announce that in conjunction with this podcast series, The Front Seat 16, I am opening up the brand new Front Seat Life Collective. It is 10 years of my work as a psychotherapist, as a Meyers-Briggs expert, as a business coach and life coach, 5 different courses, 2.5 books, all in one all-inclusive membership group. I'm getting off of Facebook. I am healing my hustle, practicing what I preach. I have moved over to the unbelievably fabulous platform called Mighty Networks. We are still doing live calls. This is a safe and exclusive and incredible community for all my weirdos out there. So all my intuitives, it is time for us to come together, to gather, to learn about each other, to be inspired, to be motivated, and to be educated on this incredible part of your personality type. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. We will have spotlight speakers, guest speakers, and so much more. It will be open only for a period of time, so do not wait. It is an incredibly affordable price. You also get an opportunity to schedule one-on-one sessions with me, also at a discounted price, and I cannot wait. I literally can't wait to welcome you in to this new and exclusive and wonderfully private and incredibly inspiring community, the Front Seat Life Collective. To find out more, just go over to jessicabutts.com and I will see you on the inside. This is really, really helpful. Every time I do an interview or any sort of podcast or video, I always like to think about what the listeners are getting out of it. And I'm just I always envision them either driving or at the gym for some reason.
Yeah.
And I'm envisioning so many people listening. Most of my listeners are NFs. And so my guess is a lot of them are listening and they're, again, seeing their spouse or their mom or somebody, and they're having.
I'm scaring them, right?
I don't think you're scaring them. I think they're having a lot of holy shit moments, actually, because as I've been doing this for 10 years, I so often just see people not understand the opposite type. They just don't get it. And this is exactly why I wanted to do this Front Seat 16 series, is so that people can hear from someone super, super honest about their good stuff and their bad stuff of what it's like to be in your type. And again, you and Katie are such a great example as exact opposite types. So again, thank you. So let me ask you this. I hear this one a lot of judgment around extroverts, especially ESTJs. They're kind of leading everything, to be completely honest, right? You probably do most of the planning for trips and the grocery shopping and the cooking and where we're going to dinner, because that's just who you are. You're very organized mentally. The J in you is, I can't just let it unfold. I need to know what's going on. I need to know what we're doing this weekend. As an extrovert, it sounds like you're a very strong extrovert as well. Like, I want to be out with people. I want to do things. You're planning, and you're married to somebody, an introvert, who is very go with the flow and may not converse as much. My guess is if you are with friends, you are the vocal one, and she's probably a little listener. I find INFPs and introverts in general, but INFPs, INFJs specifically, as excellent observers and listeners, which I have experienced as at times, I'll just be transparent with you since you're being so transparent, is a little frustrating as an extrovert. So when I get together with people, you and I enjoy banter, right? It's beep, bop, 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 bop. It's just invigorating for us. It's like a fucking drug. I mean, I love it. It's just the bouncing of ideas and bing, bong, boo. Oh my God. Yes, go. And then I'll look over at either let's just say an introverted person, because I have a lot of them in my life. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on over here? What is happening with you? Are you bored? Do you not want to be here? Is this annoying to you? Like, I'm curious your experience with that, with either Katie or anybody else in your life that's an introvert.
Yeah. And I think I said that earlier, is the silence is really maddening. So I don't know, other people might have, I shouldn't talk about family history so much. Who knows who would listen to this? But, there are certain families you grow up in, and silence can be really negative things. Like, you're just waiting for the bomb to explode, or someone to lose it, or someone to get in trouble, or silence usually means something's wrong. And so for me, that when people aren't talking, which is a lot of time around introverts, they're listening and observing and taking all this in. It makes me crazy going, when's the other shoe going to drop, or what are they going to say? Or even worse is, I don't like to be ignored. Like, right. No extrovert likes to be ignored. And so like, are you ignoring me? Are you bored? Are you about to just get up and leave and say, I don't ever want to talk to you again? Like, the silence, just to me, there's all this stuff that is fear in silence. And so that's what I see when I'm around all the people that aren't talking, the introverted ones, is it scares me what is going on and what might happen, because if people are talking and having this interaction, you know where they stand and what's happening, and you're feeling good about it, or going, oh, they're an idiot, or like, at least you can judge something, right? Then you have I don't mean judge in a bad way, but you just can assess what's happening. But if you have, 4 introverts sitting over there and there's 2 extroverts talking, and you just go, wow, we could have just had this thing, and those 4 could have gone home and went to bed. Like, why are they here? Kind of like, are you not contributing? And it's funny, because then later you'll hear, oh, I had a great time. And like, they really enjoyed listening and taking it in, and they think about it later, and it means something 2 days later. And like, they were actually having a blast. And that's the hard thing for me. That's what I observe when people get really quiet, is I'm always trying to draw them in, like, oh, hey, so what do you think? Or I try to drag them in. And then apparently that's a really bad thing to do. And they get really mad, because like, leave me alone. I was just fine over here, and now you've dragged me in. But that's the hard part, to know when to draw people in and when to let them just live in that little bubble over there, and they're actually really having a good time, because I never know. And so,
how have you learned how to cope with that? Because that was brilliant, everything you just said about your experience of introverts. And this is why, again, I wanted to have this conversation, is so that introverts can see how we're observing them, and I'll just say all of the judgments, all of the experiences that we have. And that you said something very powerful, is that I'm feeling ignored. This is your experience of their silence.
Right.
So how have you learned how to cope with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I know for her at least now it's been long enough. I know what's going on and that she isn't going to participate. And when she has something to say, she's going to say it and it will be important and a good contribution that hopefully I'm not getting kicked under the table of like, stop talking. But like, yeah, we kind of even have this code word. If you say cactus, it means stop. Like you've gone too far and now you're annoyed. Like, so, but it's when other people learn your cactus word, then you can't use it anymore because they're like, oh, she just told her to shut up. But yeah, I don't remember where that came up. It was something, it might've been one of my nephews, but somebody one time said something about, cactus, meaning you're being prickly, like what, so that's supposed to be the word of like, dial it back and stop, change the subject. And so I usually, I usually get that cue. I never have to say, it's not funny, right? We never have to tell the introverted people, stop talking about this, or you've gone too far, or, they always like seem to know not to go too far. But so so for her, I just kind of know that. And I trust that if she wasn't having a good time, I would know somehow, like we'd be, oh, it's time to go. We have to go do that. Like, that's usually what it is, right? They decide the party's over and everyone's going home. Like, that's how I know.
Yeah.
But for other people that I don't know as well that are introverted, it's always kind of a game to me to figure out, are you just shy or are you not going to participate? Or do you all just think we're a bunch of idiots over here? Like, it's kind of a game to me to figure it out. Yeah. They always say later, I had a great time. A lot of people really like to be entertained. They just, they want to hear. Yes. They're like,
they want to observe.
A fly on the wall, right? Yeah. They want to go to the wine tasting and listen to all of us giggle and say whatever and talk and blah, blah, blah. And they don't contribute. And then they go home and they're like, that was the most fun night I've had out and ever. And you're like, really? Because you didn't say a word, but they love to watch. It's like we're the TV, right? We're the movie or the show. Yeah. And so I don't know, I guess it's really bad, but it kind of doesn't bother me anymore. I'm like, if you don't want to keep up and participate, then I guess you have a reason over there. And I'm like, it's not my job to make you interact. But before I would have been more worried about it. But like, with all things, like the older you get, you just start to go, whatever, like this is what it is. And maybe that's who they are. And if they don't have a voice to stand up and say something, then they get whatever it is they're getting. And I guess they like it or else they would leave by now.
And this is the whole thing about being apologetically who we are, put our own oxygen mask on first, and then love other people for who they are. So whether or not it's the ESTJ attitude that you're having, which is whatever, I need to let this not affect my life. But what I observe over and over and over again is people jumping on the other side of the net and trying to manage and control other people to make them like themselves. So here's an example of something that I think you have learned because you're married to a completely opposite type. So when I first started dating the person I'm dating, I brought around a very extroverted couple. It was my birthday, actually. So there's a lot of people there. And this extroverted couple has 3 extroverted kids.
Of course they do.
Of course they do. And so this is who they are. And she told me afterwards that she, of course they cornered him and were just like, oh my God, tell me everything about you. And who are you? And what's your name? And what's your favorite color? And do you have a puffy coat? And blah, 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 blah. And of course his energy was like, no, thank you. Like, he's very confident, like, not going to participate in this bullshittery. Like, I'm fine over here by myself. And of course, her response later was a very judgmental of that he just doesn't seem very engaging and blah, 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 blah. And we had to have this conversation basically is what we had is thank you. And you are being extremely judgmental right now of somebody that you just don't understand because you and everybody in your immediate family is bantery and you're forgetting that half of the population is completely opposite from you. And that does not mean that they are not engaged. It does not mean they are not interested. It doesn't mean they don't like you. It doesn't mean they don't like me. I mean, there's so many judgments that come along with it. And I think this conversation is so helpful, specifically around the introversion and extroversion, because you are being very honest about what people do is that we just don't get it because it's not who we are. And then we go around and judge. And I'm sure introverts, I'm going to do 8 introverted interviews, which will have very different energy.
Right.
And they will probably say things like, oh my God, they seem like they have nervous energy. We need a cactus word to get them to shut the fuck up. We need like these kinds of things. And so I just love this conversation because this is so much of what I witness with my clients in my therapy practice is watching people, again, jump on the other side of the net, pathologize, manage, judge, control somebody else when we just get to go, they're just different from us. And the amount of energy that we can save in our lives from not doing those kinds of things is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Well, there's a couple different, I would call self-help programs, but there's lots of things out in the world, but there's one, several of them have something in common kind of called like that people are meaning making machines, right? Like we give meaning to things that don't have any meaning. Like that's just a human thing is you made that mean something. It was just like there's an apple sitting on the table and you made it mean apples are bad, or I made it mean there's a pie, or like, you give meaning to a thing that is just exists in the world, but we put our like spin on it and go, that has some meaning, where the other person looks at it and sees a completely different thing. And that's part of the whole conflict is the meaning that you assign based on your like perspective in the world. And so like taking the meaning away, and it's like, because you can agree on that, right? That, there's an apple on the table. Yep, there's an apple on the table. Okay, well now we could agree. But most of us would look and see two totally different things. And then that's where the conflict or the judging or and I don't do it very well, but I'm aware of the dynamic, right? Of like, I make everything mean something, if you give me a look, it meant something. If you didn't show up, it meant something. If you don't call me back, so I don't do a great job of it, but I'm aware of this phenomenon, like that we assign meaning and we all do it differently based on where we come from. And I think that's a huge part of the conflict. So, another person, they did this whole thing in their, they had a dental practice and they had these people that would come in and do this education. And the whole premise was when something would happen, before they got mad or made a decision or got judgy, they would say, well, what else could it be? And sometimes you had to do that 4 or 5 times to like, what else could it be? It was maybe their dog died. Maybe their mom's sick. Maybe. And then you got to like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, there's so many other possibilities. Let's not decide they're just an asshole, right? It was like maybe all these. And so whenever I can stop long enough to think that, like, that's a helpful thing for, my personality type is what else could it be? Because with the J, right? It's like, I'm immediately like, no, they don't like me, or no, they don't want to be here, or they're just an idiot. Like I just immediately decide based on what you just did, I give it meaning instead of what else could it be? And then it's, the dog died, the person has cancer, they just lost their job. And then you can dial it back. Even if you're not good at the empathy, it's like, you can go, okay, maybe this isn't a good time. Yeah. That's my level of empathy. Oh, maybe this isn't a good time.
This is great. And that last analogy reminds me of Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The 4 Agreements. Yep. And that one of the agreements is don't take anything personally. That shit changed my life, Karen, especially when I was reading it kind of the time I was going through my divorce. And I will never forget this moment as long as I live. I was in the QFC in my new neighborhood by myself, sad as fuck, buying, wine and 1 banana and chocolate and tampons. Like I'm just depressed. And I'm walking through the store and someone says, smile. And I just was like, okay, fuck y'all. And I have chills right now thinking about how angry I was. And in that moment, that agreement, don't take anything personally, exactly what you're saying right now too, is that my reality has nothing to do with yours. Like, you don't know what's going on with me. Don't talk to me like that. We are such interesting creatures in that way. And when we can learn, again, to our story in graduate school, we called it the ladder of inference. Like we just make meaning and then we draw conclusions and then we make up a story that is completely our story based on an observable data. An apple sitting on the table, or this Don Miguel Ruiz thing of, we assign meaning and make it about us. And it's just so often, unless I always just say, don't be a dick. Like just go through life and just be a good person as much as humanly possible. And then other than that, like just let it roll off. Cause we just spend so much time doing that stuff.
Yeah, that making a story concept is the same along the lines of the giving stuff meaning, because that was something I heard a long, long time ago too about, well, that's your story. You created a whole story about something that happened and the other person has literally no idea.
Yep.
Like you have built this entire thing.
Yep.
Like instead of just like, you go back to the facts of like, I walked out the door, they turned left, and like you go, and then you have a whole story that you could tell for 15 minutes about this incident when really all that happened is two people walked out a door and turned a different direction, and you have a story. And it's like, it's amazing when you get rid of the story, like when you get back to what was the meaning and what really actually happened. But I think my personality type, especially like I can't remember that stuff fast enough to stop myself from getting in trouble, right? Like I can go, oh, wait, is there a story? What was the meaning? What's going on in their life? Like, I don't remember that. I just go like from 0 to 60 and I'm already like pissed, right? So like, that's the hard part is understanding how you ever can dial it back to be, could you take some of the opposite side and bring it in and like, so the gray area, right? I don't have the gray. Like I'm either like happy or I'm unhappy. There's no middle. Like, and that's the good thing, I guess, when you like say how would other people describe you and all is, everybody knows exactly pretty much where I stand. Like, you don't really have to wonder, like, I wonder if she's mad or I wonder if she likes me. Like, like there just isn't any gray area. So that's one of the harder things to figure out is how you dial back and kind of like get a little of both, because it just seems like it's 0 or 100. So that's a challenge, I think, for my type.
This was so great. So I'm just aware of time and I want to give you an opportunity, Karen. I think you've been incredibly forthcoming and super honest and transparent so that people can learn today. But I want to just in closing, give you an opportunity to say anything that you haven't yet been able to say, kind of good, bad about the ESTJ lifestyle, if you will.
I think it's, not the word isn't comforting, but it's just really nice to know like there's sort of a reason and like you fit into it, not to be put into a box, right? But it's like, oh, there's a type and I am that kind of. I think when I hear people that say they find out they're on the spectrum or something, right? Like you just go, oh, or they have ADHD. It's like, oh, there's a reason. Like I'm a certain kind of a person and have a thing that not out of your control necessarily, but it's just like growing up, if you're a child and you grew up with alcoholics, right? Like that's kind of, that shit's hard to undo. Like it's done. It was cast. You spend your whole life trying to dig out of some things. But so like, I think the personality types, it's so reassuring. Like part of me, the skeptic part of me goes, yeah, right. I'm one of there's only 16 types of people in the world and I'm one of them. Like that's bullshit. Like I'm more unique than one of 16. Right. But then you go, wow. But when you describe the thing that nobody knew me, I just took a little test and these things came back and you're like, oh, they wrote that for me. And so you start to go, you don't feel like so much of a unicorn or like, oh, I'm the only idiot in the room. It's like, oh, other people feel like this too, but other people just hide it better or feel like it's not appropriate to talk about. Or so that's why I love, when you say that and about your mom and the stuff that she does, it's like, I'm like, oh, thank God somebody else is acting that way too. See, it's not just me. And so I'm like, not that it gives you an excuse or permission to like be this person that you are, but somebody did a lot of work to figure all this out, that we have these certain traits and characteristics. And like, I think the biggest key to me would be to figure out how in the world do you ever slow down enough to like rein in the parts that that go crazy and like allow the other side to come in that you're not so good at. Like, if we all had the time and space, to go, oh, I could fix this. Like if you could freeze time, right? And go, okay, you do this, you're on the bad road. And if you do this, you might be able to save this. Like if we could have that frozen moment. But I always feel like, I don't know how the introverts feel, but I feel like my personality type is the one that always wishes we had more time to make a different decision. Like maybe we ran over people, but introverts, I never hear that going, I wish that we'd been able to stop that. And I could have made, because they have all the time in the world and aren't already moving that fast. And so I'm like, I don't know what their Achilles heel is, but that's what I love about the types, though. You can get it and understand it, and other people are built the same way. So you're not the only freak, and like, oh, you didn't turn out wrong, or somebody didn't break you. It's like, no, this is just how a lot of people are. And I think you probably see this a lot too. Like a lot of the creative women, entrepreneurs, small business owners, I don't know why, but all of them are married to like engineer dudes that don't understand them and don't talk and don't give them support. And like, it's such a stereotype. And I go, how did this turn out that every woman has this engineer dude at home that isn't supportive? And, take shots at everything that they do and thinks they are wasting their time and having ladies who lunch and don't make enough money. And like every woman, so many that come to me and want coaching have the same guy at home, or, sometimes it's a woman, but mostly it's a guy engineer. And I'm like,
wow.
Oh, this type thing really, it does. Like, I don't know how the people always seem to be drawn the same polar opposites, but that's kind of, you end up with these two sides. And there's a reason, obviously, that you get together. But like I said, if you had two of the same type, you would devour each other. So I do think it's important to know what people have and how to accommodate it and go, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be quiet and let the other person do this thing. Or because otherwise, if you weren't aware of it, you would just be this like banshee running around like, this
totally
scorching the earth. Right. So I really appreciate, the structure, like we like structure. So going, oh, I'm like this thing, and it actually draws other people to you. And they're like, me too. And, so I think that I love the structure of it. I love that somebody figured it out, that all these things go together, and it's what makes you up. And it's still hard to believe there's only like 16, but it's just like there's only 12 in the zodiac, right? And people tell you all the time, oh, you're Pisces, that means this. And I'm like, that is just wrong. And then you're like, oh, that's me.
Totally.
So yes, I love the structure, the categorization, because when you can identify something, then you can actually decide to do something different with it or about it. But if you don't even know and you're just like, oh, this life is just random, that feels pretty helpless.
Yeah. Wow. I couldn't have said it better. That was beautiful. Beautiful. Karen, thank you so much. For those that want to potentially work with you or know more about you, where is the best place to find you?
So my website is onesmartcookiemarketing.com. So not onesmartcookie.com. That will take you to a cookie company. And everybody thinks that I make cookies, and I do not. So onesmartcookiemarketing.com. That company actually called me once and asked if they could make cookies for my company, and I would give them to my clients. It's kind of funny. So onesmartcookiemarketing.com. And I do, individual coaching and strategy and all kinds of things. And not just social media. That is something I'm well known for, is my social media work, but it really extends to marketing, which is all about, newsletters and in-person networking and your website. And so the whole gamut of marketing of, people that have are really talented at a particular thing and wish they could just do that all day and didn't have to market. I mean, that's what I try to help them, is figure out, get marketing compartmentalized into a small amount every day or week so that they can go back to doing the thing that they love and are passionate about. And that's who I want to work with.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, Karen, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, truly, thank you so much for listening. I know that you have a ton of options, and the fact that you are taking time to listen to the Front Seat Life podcast means absolutely everything to me. If you're interested in learning more about the Front Seat Life way of life in the community, you can find out all about that at jessicabutts.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.